A waitress wears a luxury watch, and a billionaire grandmother screams. It sparks chaos no one expected. The early afternoon sun poured generously through the towering glass windows of Café Lumière, turning the polished marble countertops into golden mirrors and casting long, warm rays across the meticulously arranged tables. The air was a comforting blend of roasted coffee, buttery croissants, and sweet pastries, mingling in a fragrant symphony that invited both relaxation and indulgence. Amid this bustling ambiance, Sophia Bennett moved gracefully between tables, her apron brushing softly against her thighs as she carried a tray of freshly brewed cappuccinos. Her eyes sparkled with a quiet determination, her warm brown skin glowing under the afternoon sunlight. In her late 20s, Sophia was the kind of waitress who noticed everything, from the subtle frown on a regular's face to the tiny drip of foam on a cup's rim. She took pride in her work, always with a cheerful smile that somehow seemed to lighten the atmosphere even on the busiest of days. Today, however, something unusual shimmered on her wrist, a luxurious wristwatch, its polished gold gleaming under the sunlight. It wasn't ostentatious, but the craftsmanship and weight of it hinted at a value far beyond the daily wages Sophia earned. She adjusted it casually as she refilled a coffee cup, thinking little of the reactions it might provoke. To her, it was a gift, a small token of appreciation from a regular customer who admired her dedication. The chime of the cafe doorbell cut through the gentle hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware. Sophia glanced up as a figure entered, Evelyn Whitmore, an elderly woman whose elegance seemed to announce itself before she even took a step inside. Evelyn's silver hair was perfectly coiffed, her tailored silk blouse and designer skirt immaculate, pearls glinting around her neck like tiny satellites of wealth. She carried herself with a slow, deliberate grace, her eyes scanning the cafe with the casual scrutiny of someone accustomed to being noticed. Then, as if time had paused, Evelyn froze mid-step. Her eyes locked onto Sophia's wrist, and for the briefest instant, the bustling cafe seemed to fall silent. Mouth slightly agape, she clutched her handbag with trembling fingers, the elegant poise she had maintained moments ago replaced by something raw and incredulous. A few patrons noticed her reaction, exchanging curious glances, their murmurs rising into a low ripple of speculation. Sophia, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, paused with her tray in hand, her brow furrowing slightly. The warm, confident smile she usually wore faltered as she realized she had captured the full attention of this distinguished woman. Evelyn's gaze burned with intensity, her eyes darting between the watch and Sophia's face as if trying to reconcile an impossible realization. The cafe's sunlight reflected sharply off the golden face of the watch, almost as though it were amplifying the moment, making every detail impossible to ignore. A hush fell over the nearby tables. Coffee cups sat untouched, conversations paused mid-sentence, and the soft jazz playing over the cafe's speakers seemed to falter. The tension was palpable. Everyone sensed that something extraordinary, something dramatic, was about to unfold. Patrons leaned forward subtly, some shielding phones, anticipating a spectacle. Sophia's heart beat a little faster, a faint pulse in her temples, but she stayed rooted in place, curious and cautious in equal measure. Why was this elderly woman staring at her wrist with such disbelief? She had worn the watch proudly, yes, but she had never imagined it would provoke such a reaction. The rich, commanding presence of Evelyn Whitmore seemed almost out of place in the cozy, sunlit cafe, yet it was clear that this confrontation, or perhaps revelation, was inevitable. The question hung in the air, heavy and urgent. Why was Evelyn so shocked by the watch? Sophia could feel the collective anticipation of the room pressing against her, like the pause before a storm breaks. The clinking of cutlery and the soft hiss of the espresso machine seemed to fade into background noise. All eyes were now on her, and the luxurious timepiece on her wrist gleamed innocently, unaware of the drama it had just ignited. And in that golden, quiet moment, Sophia realized Nothing would ever feel ordinary in this cafe again. The sudden tension in Café Lumière cracked a cheerful hum like a shard of glass. Evelyn Whitmore's voice cut sharply through the warm afternoon air, high-pitched and edged with outrage. "That watch is mine. How dare you wear it?" she exclaimed, the words echoing against the marble countertops and polished tiles. Her perfectly manicured fingers jabbed toward Sophia's wrist, trembling with anger and disbelief. The pearls around her neck clinked softly as she gestured, a discordant, almost musical punctuation to her indignation. For a moment, time seemed to warp around Sophia. The cheerful afternoon transformed into a suffocating spotlight. Coffee cups clattered as a waiter hurried past, the rich, bitter aroma of espresso suddenly overwhelming in her senses. The low hum of conversation shifted into a chorus of whispers, murmurs carrying a mixture of curiosity and judgment across the cafe. Eyes turned toward the confrontation, each glance weighing heavily on Sophia's chest. Sophia's hands trembled as she clutched the tray she had been holding, the porcelain teetering dangerously with the foam still glistening on the cappuccino cups. Her pulse thumped violently in her ears, each beat loud enough to drown out the soft jazz that had filled the cafe moments before. Her cheeks burned, a flush of both embarrassment and disbelief. How could someone with such wealth, such status accuse her of theft in front of everyone, as if her very presence were a crime? I didn't steal anything," Sophia managed, her voice barely above a whisper at first, then growing firmer as she tried to anchor herself. "This watch was a gift. From a customer who appreciated my work." "You're mistaken." But Evelyn was having none of it. Her eyes narrowed, nostrils flaring, and her voice rose again, dripping with entitlement. "Mistaken? Don't insult me. I know a watch like this, and it's mine. You think you can just take it because of who you are." The cafe manager, a tall man in a crisp white shirt, stepped forward nervously, hands raised in an attempt to diffuse the tension. "Ma'am, please, maybe," he began, but Evelyn waved him off, her sharp gaze slicing through the air as if it could cut the room in half. Sophia swallowed hard, her throat dry, the rich scent of espresso and pastries now mingled with the acrid sting of fear. Her pulse quickened, fingers curling around the edge of the tray as she fought the rising panic inside her. She could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her, a mix of expectation, judgment, and voyeuristic curiosity. Every whisper felt like it was directed at her alone, every soft footstep amplified. She could hear a spoon clink against a coffee cup somewhere across the room, distant yet unbearably sharp. She wanted to move, to explain more, to somehow make this nightmare dissipate, but her feet felt rooted to the polished floor. Evelyn's words were sharp as knives, slicing away at Sophia's composure, leaving her exposed. Fear pricked at the corners of her mind, but beneath it simmered humiliation and disbelief. How could someone assume, so brazenly and publicly, that she was a thief? "Please," Sophia said again, more firmly this time, lifting her wrist slightly so the sunlight glinted off the gold, highlighting its unique engraving. "It's mine, I promise. I didn't take anything from you." Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the watch, narrowing in suspicion as if scrutinizing every millimeter. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. The espresso machine hissed, cups clattered again, and the whispers grew louder, a low crescendo of tension that seemed to vibrate in Sophia's bones. Every nerve in her body screamed for the moment to end, yet the accusation hung stubbornly in the air. Could she prove her innocence? Or would Evelyn's fury escalate further, shattering the calm of the cafe and leaving Sophia humiliated before everyone she had served with pride? The question lingered like the bitter aroma of coffee, heavy and unavoidable, as all eyes remained locked on the trembling waitress and the furious billionaire grandmother. The tension in Café Lumière thickened like the rich crema atop a freshly poured espresso. Sophia Bennett stood behind the counter, her hands lightly gripping the edge, trying to anchor herself as a tremor ran through her fingers. The sunlight streaming through the glass windows now struck the luxurious watch on her wrist at a sharper angle, making the gold face gleam almost defiantly. Every reflective glint seemed to scream, drawing the eyes of every patron in the room. Evelyn Whitmore's voice cut through the murmur of the cafe again, sharp as a whip. "That watch is mine. How dare you wear it?" Her hand jabbed toward Sophia's wrist, the pearls around her neck bouncing slightly with each movement. Her face was flushed, a vivid red that made her usually composed elegance appear almost comical against her fury. She leaned forward as if proximity alone could reclaim what she claimed was hers. Sophia's chest heaved subtly. Her heartbeat pounded like the rhythmic hiss of the espresso machine nearby, echoing in her ears. Sweat beaded along her hairline, and a fine tremor threatened to topple the tray of coffee she had left nearby. Yet she forced herself to stand tall, her shoulders squared despite the anxiety tightening around her chest. This watch is mine," Sophia said, her voice steady though slightly trembling at the edges. "A customer gave it to me as a gift. I've never stolen anything from anyone. Please, you must believe me." Her words were calm, deliberate, meant to pierce through the fog of accusation, though the fear in her eyes betrayed the storm roiling within. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Patrons leaned closer, their whispers forming a low, expectant hum. Some reached for their phones, discreetly or not so discreetly raising devices to record the confrontation. The ambient aroma of espresso, buttery pastries, and polished wood mingled with the electric tension, making every inhalation feel heavier, almost suffocating. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing the watch as if she could will its ownership into her grasp. Her fingers flexed, restless, yet she could not reach the truth that lay in the subtle engravings only visible up close. It was a detail that had gone unnoticed by most, but one of Sophia's loyal customers, a middle-aged man who frequently came for his afternoon cappuccino, leaned slightly forward. His eyes caught the delicate engraving, the unique markings that confirmed the watch's rightful owner. Sophia's heartbeat quickened at the thought. Relief and hope surged momentarily, but she dared not show it. The stakes were too high, the humiliation too immediate. Every second that Evelyn remained unconvinced added weight to her chest, making each breath a careful effort. "I don't know why you think that watch belongs to you," Sophia continued, trying to maintain composure. "But if you look closely, you'll see it's unique. The engraving proves it's mine," Evelyn huffed, disbelief contorting her face. "Impossible. There's no way this is my property. How could someone like you?" She faltered for just a moment, glancing at the watch again, uncertainty flickering across her features. The cafe had turned into a stage of suspense. Cups of coffee sat abandoned on tables, pastries untouched, the soft jazz music nearly drowned out by the quiet intensity. The afternoon sunlight, hitting the golden face of the watch, seemed to amplify the drama, reflecting off nearby surfaces and drawing the attention of every eye in the room. The loyal customer shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, leaning closer as if confirming the engraving with his own eyes. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Patrons murmured among themselves, whispers climbing in volume, some expressing doubt, others silent admiration for Sophia's poise. The tension was tangible, like the pause before a storm breaks. Sophia's pulse raced, and a thin line of sweat traced her temple. Her hands remained steady, though inside, every nerve was alert, every instinct braced for the potential humiliation that could erupt at any moment. Could the truth about the watch be revealed in time to save her dignity? Or would Evelyn's fury escalate further, casting a shadow over the entire cafe? All eyes were on Sophia and Evelyn now, locked in a silent duel of truth versus entitlement, the gleaming watch at the center of a storm that seemed to stretch infinitely. The answer, poised delicately between revelation and disgrace, hung suspended waiting to see which way the moment would fall. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Every whisper, every soft scrape of a chair against the polished marble floor, every faint clink of a coffee cup felt magnified, echoing in the tense, expectant air. Sophia Bennett's pulse raced in her ears, each heartbeat louder than the ambient hum of conversation and the soft hiss of the espresso machine. Her hands, previously trembling with fear, unclenched slowly as she carefully turned her wrist, letting the sunlight strike the golden face of the watch at just the right angle. The metallic glint caught the eyes of everyone in the café, drawing attention like a beacon. Patrons leaned forward instinctively, some craning their necks, others adjusting their seats to see better. Phones hovered mid-air, ready to record the unfolding drama, their lenses focusing on the gleaming watch. The air smelled sharply of coffee, pastries, and tension, a combination that made every breath feel heavier. Even the soft jazz playing in the background seemed to falter under the weight of anticipation. Evelyn Whitmore's eyes, once blazing with anger, widened in disbelief. Her hand hovered mid-air, as though frozen by a sudden, incomprehensible realization. For the first time, uncertainty crept into her posture, softening the rigid arrogance she had carried moments ago. The pearls around her neck jiggled slightly as she shifted her weight, a subtle, involuntary gesture betraying the shock that rippled across her face. One of the loyal café patrons, a middle-aged man who had been observing quietly, leaned closer, examining the delicate engraving that marked Sophia's watch as unique. The tiny, intricate lettering glinted in the sunlight, a subtle but undeniable signature that confirmed Sophia's ownership. Murmurs swept through the café like a rising tide, low at first, then louder. Blending curiosity with admiration, Sophia's chest heaved with a mixture of fear, relief, and lingering adrenaline. She had stood firm, keeping her posture straight and her voice steady, but inside, a torrent of emotions surged. Pride mingled with lingering anxiety, and for a fleeting moment, she allowed herself a small, victorious smile, careful not to gloat. Her hands, once gripping the edge of the counter as if holding on to safety, now rested calmly at her sides. She had maintained her dignity, even when the world seemed to tip against her. Evelyn's lips parted and a faltering, wavering voice emerged. That's not possible." Her words trailed off, uncertain, as she glanced from the engraving to Sophia's composed face. The certainty that had fueled her anger only moments before was now replaced by doubt, and her previously commanding tone wavered into hesitation. She opened her mouth to speak again, but no words came that could undo the public misjudgment she had made. Around them, the cafe remained suspended in a rare collective stillness. Cups balanced precariously on tables, some untouched since the confrontation began. The rustle of clothing as patrons leaned forward, eager to witness the unfolding truth, punctuated the silence. Even the espresso machine seemed to pause its hissing, as though the world itself had shifted to accommodate the moment. Sophia met Evelyn's gaze steadily, unwavering, her dark eyes reflecting both composure and the quiet triumph of someone wronged but not defeated. The warmth of the sunlight contrasted sharply with the cold sting of humiliation that had been threatening to engulf her moments ago. In that golden glow, the watch gleamed innocently, a symbol of truth and integrity, standing firm against false accusation. Evelyn took a step back, her hands clasping nervously in front of her, pearls rattling faintly. For the first time, she looked unsure, almost small, in the presence of someone she had intended to shame. The tension in the cafe was tangible, a fragile thread stretched between accusation and vindication. Every eye remained fixed on the two women, anticipating the next move. The question lingered in the sunlit air, heavy and electric. How would Evelyn react now that her mistake was exposed? The answer seemed poised on the edge of a breath, a heartbeat away from shattering the suspense that had gripped everyone in the room. Sophia remained composed, chest rising and falling steadily, aware of the collective gaze, yet refusing to let it intimidate her. The metallic gleam of her watch caught one final flicker of sunlight, sparkling defiantly, a quiet declaration of truth, dignity, and the triumph of integrity over arrogance. The silence that had gripped Café Lumiere, for what felt like an eternity, finally began to lift. Evelyn Whitmore's posture softened, the rigid tension that had defined her presence moments ago now replaced by an almost tangible embarrassment. She took a hesitant step back, her eyes lowering briefly to the polished marble floor, before slowly lifting them to meet Sophia Bennett's calm, steady gaze. The pearls around her neck swayed gently with the movement, catching the softened afternoon sunlight and shimmering faintly like a quiet confession of humility. I am so sorry," Evelyn murmured, her voice low, trembling at the edges. "I should never have assumed." Her words hung in the air, delicate and tentative, yet carrying the weight of genuine contrition. The café patrons shifted subtly in their seats, some nodding in quiet approval, others murmuring among themselves at the surprising reversal of fortune. The tension that had once pressed heavily against Sophia's chest began to ease, replaced by a quiet satisfaction that radiated warmth through her very being. Sophia allowed herself a small, graceful nod, acknowledging Evelyn's apology without a hint of gloating. Her hands rested lightly on the marble countertop, fingers brushing against the smooth surface as if grounding herself in the present. Around her, the atmosphere began to normalize. The low hum of conversation returned, the clinking of cups resumed, and the hiss of the espresso machine filled the background once again. Yet there was a subtle difference now, a newfound respect that lingered like a soft fragrance in the room. The café manager, who had been hovering nervously near the side, allowed himself a breath he had been holding for the past minutes. He offered a warm, approving smile to Sophia, his eyes shining with admiration. "You handled that perfectly," he said quietly, though his words carried across the café for anyone paying attention. Patrons who had witnessed the confrontation nodded, some exchanging glances that communicated unspoken appreciation for the waitress's composure and dignity. Sophia's chest rose and fell steadily, the weight of humiliation she had feared dissipating into the soft afternoon light. The golden glow filtering through the large windows now seemed to illuminate not just her figure, but the sense of justice that had quietly prevailed. Every surface, the marble countertops, the polished tables, the trays lined with fresh pastries, seemed to shimmer with a renewed energy, as if the café itself were acknowledging the balance restored. Evelyn stood awkwardly, hands clasped loosely in front of her, her luxurious attire now a sharp contrast to the humbled expression she wore. The confrontation had stripped away layers of entitlement, leaving her momentarily vulnerable, and the reality of her mistake seemed to settle fully in her mind. The patrons continued their quiet observations, some whispering encouraging remarks to Sophia, others shaking their heads in disbelief at the audacity of her earlier accusations. Sophia's lips curved into a faint, confident smile. There was no triumph in her gaze, only the quiet knowledge that integrity had held its ground. She glanced around the café, taking in the familiar sight of neatly arranged tables, the soft warmth of sunlight across the wooden chairs, the subtle aroma of coffee that mingled with the sweetness of pastries. It all felt simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary because it was her daily world. Extraordinary because she had faced public humiliation and emerged unscathed, her dignity intact. The whispers continued to ripple softly through the café. Evelyn's apology had shifted perceptions instantly. Where there had been disbelief and condescension, there was now respect, tinged with a quiet awe. The patron's subtle nods, the manager's approving glance, the soft smiles exchanged, each was a testament to Sophia's poise, her unwavering calm under pressure. Yet even as the café returned to its usual rhythm, a lingering question hovered in the air. Would this moment transform Evelyn Whitmore into a more considerate, humble person? Or would it fade as just another fleeting embarrassment, a story she would quietly tuck away and forget? The afternoon sunlight softened, bathing the room in a golden glow. and Sophia moved gracefully back to her tasks, the quiet satisfaction of her vindication warming her heart. As she polished a counter and refilled a tray, she allowed herself a brief exhale, savoring the calm after the storm, aware that while the cafe had resumed its usual bustle, something subtle but significant had shifted forever. The afternoon sunlight in Café Lumière settled into a gentle golden glow, softening the edges of the bustling space. Sophia Bennett moved gracefully among the tables, her steps confident, her posture upright. The tension that had weighed on her chest only moments before had eased, replaced with a quiet satisfaction that hummed warmly beneath her skin. Patrons who had witnessed the confrontation now regarded her differently, their eyes filled with admiration rather than curiosity or judgment. Some subtly nodded, others whispered approving remarks, and a few even offered smiles of respect as she refilled cups or cleared plates. Sophia's dark eyes reflected both relief and pride. The luxurious watch on her wrist, once the source of public accusation, now glimmered innocently in the soft light, a testament not to wealth but to her honesty and integrity. Each careful movement she made arranging pastries on a tray, setting a cup of espresso before a customer, was a quiet affirmation that dignity was not something that could be taken or assumed. It was something one carried through character, perseverance, and grace. Evelyn Whitmore lingered near the counter, her pearl necklace shifting slightly with each tentative step. Her gaze, once sharp with entitlement, had softened, replaced by a mixture of reflection and humility. She had entered the cafe ready to assert ownership and command, but now she saw, with an uncomfortable clarity, that her assumptions had been flawed. The incident had forced her to confront not just the reality of the watch, but the prejudices she had unconsciously carried. Wealth and status, she realized, could never replace the respect earned through honesty, effort, and integrity. I didn't realize, Evelyn murmured, her voice quiet but sincere, as she watched Sophia move among the tables with unshakable composure. She had thought the confrontation would reinforce her superiority, but instead it had become a lesson she could not ignore. Every detail, the steadiness of Sophia's hands, the warm confidence in her eyes, the way patrons responded with admiration imprinted itself on Evelyn's consciousness. The world could not be measured by material possessions alone. Character revealed the truest wealth. Sophia allowed herself a soft, warm smile as she approached a table to place a fresh cappuccino in front of a regular customer. The aroma of roasted coffee mingled with the scent of buttery pastries, filling the air with comfort and familiarity. The subtle clinking of spoons against cups, the quiet laughter of patrons, and the gentle murmur of conversation created a calm, welcoming rhythm that contrasted sharply with the earlier chaos. Yet, beneath the calm, a sense of empowerment lingered within Sophia, an internal acknowledgement that she had faced public scrutiny and emerged with dignity intact. Even the cafe manager, who had observed the entire ordeal with a mix of anxiety and relief, now offered a genuine smile. "Well done, Sophia," he said quietly, though his voice carried weight through the surrounding tables. Patrons continued their day, but the memory of what had transpired, the lesson of humility, courage, and integrity hung subtly in the air, invisible yet undeniable. Evelyn remained near the counter, her expression thoughtful. She had been humbled, forced to confront assumptions she had taken for granted. The richness of her wardrobe, the shine of her pearls, the weight of her legacy, they were trivial in comparison to the quiet strength Sophia had displayed. The incident left a lasting impression on her, a gentle but firm reminder that empathy and respect were earned, not given. Sophia moved gracefully to the side counter, arranging pastries and wiping surfaces with practiced care. She felt the weight of respect from those around her, not loud or boisterous, but steady and affirming. Her chest rose and fell evenly, her mind clear, her heart light. The warmth of the sunlight, the comforting aroma of coffee, and the subtle nods from patrons combined into a sensation of quiet triumph. a reminder that integrity and honesty held their own. Unshakable power. As the afternoon waned, the cafe returned to its usual rhythm. Yet the memory of the confrontation lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. For Sophia, it was a quiet confirmation of her worth and character. For Evelyn, a lesson in humility, empathy, and the enduring truth that dignity is revealed not by wealth, but by how one treats others. And for everyone else, a fleeting but vivid reminder that courage and honesty always leave a mark, one that shines far brighter than gold.